How's it going, everybody? So today I'm going to be teaching you how to animate screen effects in VRChat for your VRChat avatar. These are the type of things that usually cause epilepsy on your screen, or they're just, cool fun animations. The point is we're going to be keyframing a song using keyframing tools and Levian's screen space Uber shader, which is a free public shader that you can grab off of VRC mods. I will have a link in the description for everything you need for this video. And I'm going to be pulling that stuff right now and importing it into my Unity project. It will be a Google Drive link, and just check the link in the description for everything. But we're going to be importing the shader itself, our keyframing audio tool, as well as our particle system, which for a screen effect animation, you could use a sphere or a particle system, but in this case, I'm going to use a particle system for over-rendering purposes. So, I'm going to import all of this. Alright, so now that we have everything imported, you'll notice that you have a new little blue box. That's our particle system, which, as I said, just works as our sphere. If you've never worked with a screen effect before, or a screen effect shader, essentially you would make a sphere, so a 3D object like this, and we'll go ahead and center it real quick. And then you would make the size quite large, so about 20, 20, 20, for example. And basically everything covered in this area would be affected by the screen effect shader that we're going to do. But in this case, we're just going to use a particle system, as I said, for over-rendering purposes. So, first thing you're going to want to do though is bring out our audio keyframing tool. So we're going to go to Window, Better Keyframing by Reaper Gang. We just imported that. We're going to click this, and it will prompt you with this audio tool. We're going to click where the text is right here, because that way we can actually drag the physical tab, and we're going to put this at the bottom of our screen like this. And feel free to make this window smaller, so go right here and you can just make it smaller because we want to be able to see our animation. And another quick thing we need to adjust before we can start is the camera back here. We're going to want to move this to the front of our avatar and then rotate it, because right now if we go to game, we're behind the avatar, it looks kind of scuffed. So we're going to move it up here and then rotate it real quick. And you can see the camera preview down here. We're just going to try to center this the best we can. Feel free to adjust to your liking. But we're going to be using the game camera when we animate, so that way we can see exactly what effects are causing what. Looks pretty good. Now, what we're going to do is create a material with the shader that we are using for our animation. So you need to go to your assets down here, right click, create material. We're going to call this Levian's because that's the shader that we're using. You could also call it the name of the song plus whatever shader you're using. Then we're going to go to the top right and we're going to change what shader we're using for this material. It's going to be Uber shader version 2.9. Click that. And you'll see that this changes. And now this is a screen effect shader. So now what we're going to do is import whatever audio we want. We're just going to throw that in our Unity project. In this case, I'm going to be using a solid called Crunk Ain't Dead, which sounds a little bit like this. Yes, nice rap song. I'm going to download it real quick because I just converted it. I'm going to drag and drop this into my Unity project. So you'll see we have our audio file down here. Some of these things you can do in whatever order, so don't worry too much about the order right now. The point is we're just setting everything up for keyframing. So we have our audio clip, we have our particle system, and we have our Levian's shader, which is a material now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a game object. We're going to go to our hierarchy, create empty. And so now this particle system that we imported, we're going to drag onto the hierarchy right here, and then drag it onto our game object. So now you'll see that we have a game object and a particle system. So since the name of the animation, since the song name is Crunk Ain't Dead, I'm probably going to rename this game object real quick. I'm just going to call it GameObject Crunk. Why not? There we go. So that just tells me what it is. And now I need to drag this material we made that has our actual screen effect shader onto this particle system, which, as I said, basically works as a sphere. So we're going to drag Levian's onto the particle system. Bam. And so now whenever I click particle system in the hierarchy, you'll see that I can scroll down here and expand Leviance. It's now on the particle system. And you'll also notice that there's a little warning mark right here, which we're going to have to set up. It says, shader rendered by particle system, but using setup for meshes. Shader will be appearing incorrectly. This is because we need to check for particle system. Now, for different shaders that you import, the settings might be different. But generally speaking, if you're using the particle system I supplied you with in the Google Drive, make sure you set it up for a particle system in the main settings of whatever shader you're using, whether it's Doppels or DocMe, etc. And then another main setting we want to change real quick is where it says fade settings. We're going to make the fade start 0 and the end fade 100,000. Basically all this does is make sure that within this particle system, the entire area is going to be the max distance covered, which it's kind of hard to explain, but basically the particle effect will never fade out. It will always be its max effect. So now that that's set up, we are almost ready to keyframe. I can go ahead and close this particle system thing because we're not going to be messing with that. That way we can just get that out of the way and just look at our Leviance. But so now we need to drag this audio clip into our Audio Reaper Gang tool. So that way we can hear the audio when we keyframe. So notice how I just dragged this MP3 into here. Alright, now we are pretty much ready to keyframe. So the way we're going to do this is you need your animation tab, right? So make sure that you go to Window and grab that animation tab if you haven't already and move it down here. Once you do that and have your animation tab, we're going to click on this game object that we made earlier and go to the animation tab and hit create. Because the name of the song is Crunk Ain't Dead, I'm just going to call it Crunk. And then, yes. So now we are pretty much ready to keyframe. We will click on Particle System, which is what has Leviance shader on it, and we are ready to animate. So now that we're ready to animate, let's go ahead and turn on our Audio Reaper Gang tool so that we can hear the audio when we move our white line. You'll notice when I move this white line, you'll hear music. I'm hoping and praying that when this video comes out, it will not be ear rape. But yes, as you move the white line, you'll notice you can hear the song. And that's how we're going to use our keyframes to determine where every bass note is and when we make a change on our screen effect. But there's one last thing we need to do. We need to go ahead and switch it to game instead of the scene, because game is going to show us the real world changes of whatever effect we're changing. So let's say we shake the screen or glitch out the screen. You want to see what the effect looks like in the game rather than the scene, because the scene can sometimes vary and won't look exactly the same as it will in the actual game. So now that we have everything set up, our tab is set to game, we've selected Particle System, which has our shader, and we have our Audio Reaper Gang turned on, we can begin keyframing. So the way this works is anytime we make a change in here, we need to hit the record button, which is located right here. When you hit record, it's going to light up red, and any change that you make will also turn red. So for example, if I want to enable glitch, I will expand glitch, and I can turn it on right here, and you'll notice it turned on, and it also added a keyframe down here. And anytime I make a change with any of these values, it will turn red. So let's say I change the intensity to 1, which made it a lot more cancerous, as you can tell. You'll notice that this effect turned red. And when it turns red, that means it recorded a change, and the change is down here as a keyframe. But I don't want to add glitch at the start. I don't want to do any of this. I was merely using it as an example. So I'm going to hit Control-Z a couple times, and you'll notice that everything went away. If you make any mistakes while animating, feel free to hit Control-Z or Control-Y to undo and redo your mistakes or things that you want to redo. So after demonstrating what the record button does, we need to zero out every single effect that we want to use at the very start of the animation. Because the way this works is any effect that we want to use, we're going to zero it out at the very first keyframe. So you'll notice this little number, it says 0, so we're at the start of the animation. You can also use this little button right here to bring you straight back, no matter where the white line is. You can just hit this button. But we want to be at the very start, and we're going to hit record. And you need to be thinking about any effect you want to use. So in this case, we're almost certainly going to be using zoom. So let's go ahead and enable zoom. Simple scale, sure. You can play around with it to see what you like. and see where it says zoom scale. We need to make some sort of change and then make it back to 0. So you can make it infinity and then change it back to 0. Because the point is any effect we want to use, we just have to start it at 0 at this very first keyframe. And then as things change along the song, such as bass or treble, that we want to use an effect, we're going to call upon it. So now what we're going to do is add any other effects that we want. So screen shake is another one we're going to do, probably. So we're going to turn this on. And as you can see, the screen shake is pretty light. I'm going to turn up the intensity a little bit because it's not intense enough. So this would be a little bit of troubleshooting. Give me a sec. So after messing with the screen shake a little bit, I figured it out. For some reason, Leviance does not turn red when you mess with the wave settings, but it did add keyframes whenever I changed it, so not to worry. We will just increase the speed whenever we want the screen to actually shake. So we now have our zoom and screen shake. I'm also going to possibly add some blurs just to give it a little more spice. So if you can't check it on the checkbox, just click on the mode and that should fix that for you. Just go to, we'll do radial or something of the sort. And we will crank it up a little bit. Let's see what we can do. That's quite a lot, so let's maybe do about 0 point, whatever. And then I'm just going to change it back to 0 because, we're just zeroing it out at the start. I'm honestly just playing with the shader at this point because I haven't used Leviance in a while, so you'll have to forgive me. So we have blurs. Now, let's see if there's any other effects we want. Possibly neon, something fun we could use. Intensity, as I said, we're just going to some random number and then change it to 0. So I think that'll be good for now. As you can see, we have a bunch of keyframes at the very start of our animation. And you'll notice that nothing has changed in our game. Everything is just normal. That's because all the effects that we just added are all set to 0. Now what we have to do is whenever there's a bass note or something that we want to change, we're going to move the white line there, hit record, and make changes as we see fit. But before we can do that, as you notice, if I press spacebar to try to play the animation, it will just freeze because there's only one keyframe. So to fix this, we're simply just going to zoom out. So we're going to scroll out in our animator, and I'm going to move my white line all the way. Going to move it all the way to the end of the song and hit record. And I'm just going to make any change. It really doesn't matter what I do. We just need to add a keyframe here so that we can play our song throughout without trouble. So I'm just going to maybe turn on something dumb like Vignette real quick and just screw around with it and then turn it off. There we go. So I made some sort of change to where it will put something on here, and yeah, that's all we need. So now that we made a change of some sort, you'll notice if I move my white line back to the start and I press spacebar, now the song will play normally. So now that it plays normally, this is going to make it a lot easier for keyframing, as you can probably imagine. So first thing we're going to do is you'll notice at the very start of the song, it has a bass note. So we're going to go right to that bass note, which is right about here, and I'm going to hit record. So we want to make it screen shake. Probably all the effects that we added, we're probably going to crank it up a little bit. So let's do zoom. We'll do like 0.1 for zoom, or maybe we'll do 0.3. That's fine. 0.3. And let's see. Screen shake. We can make it, let's mess around with this. Maybe like something like this. And then blurs, we'll turn that up a little bit. Offset. Maybe not too intense, so let's do about 0.3 or something of that sort. And I think I'll save the neon for later. But okay. So you'll see it looks very Cancer, yes. But this is the center effect because we need to add faders to this keyframe, which I'll explain what that is very shortly. So we're gonna get out of record, and you'll notice if we press play, it's just going to fade into this effect, like this. It's going to slowly but surely just fade into it. But what we want to do is we want it to just shake once and then just stop. So we need to add faders to this effect. So what we're going to do is move our white line a little bit before this keyframe and hit record. And every effect that we added, we need to zero it out, kind of like we did at the start of the animation. So you'll notice how zoom says 0.21 blah blah blah, looks like some number like pi. The reason that's the case is because it's going from 0 to the value 0.4, I believe, which is what we set it to. It's going to fade into it. So we don't want that though. So we're going to go 0 on the zoom, and we're going to go onto the wave settings, speed, we're going to make it 0 as well. And the blurs, we're also going to make the offset 0. So you'll notice it looks normal again. And now, since we added that fader, whenever we go right here, now it's going to fade in between here, instead of fading all the way between here. But you'll notice if I press play, it's going to keep the effect going, which we don't want that either, correct? So what we're going to do is draw a little box, and if you draw your box right in this second gray line, right here, the second gray line, if you just click in here and draw a little box, you can select all these keyframes. As long as you click in that second gray line, it will select all the keyframes going all the way down. So you don't have to worry. And I'm going to hit Control C. And then I'm going to move my white line right about here and hit Control V. My control key is a little bit broken, but there we go. And you'll notice when I press play, that is a single bass note. So we have our main effect in the center and two faders. One fader and a second fader. And these faders basically just zero out the effect that's in the center. So that's very simple keyframing, and that's basically what we're going to do for most of the bass notes. And so once you do a single bass note like we have here, if you want to be very lazy and make this easy, you can draw another box and select this entire thing and hit Control C, zoom out a little bit, and find another bass note. So there's one right here. So if you hit Control V, and I'm going to move it a little bit so it's timed better. And you'll notice now we have two bass notes. So another one right here. I believe it's So yeah, that's just some very basic keyframing on how to make the screen shake. Now, if you want to get more fancy, you can do more fancier things. Of course, there's many different effects you can use. But generally speaking, every effect you use, you just need to zero it out and let it fade into it the way you want it to. Because as I said, if you have a single effect without any faders, it will simply do one effect the entire time. So make sure you zero out what effects you want to use and then call upon them when you need them. But that is extremely simple keyframing. Of course, I'm probably not going to finish the song because I'm pretty lazy, but I think this demonstrates the point pretty clearly for most beginner keyframers. I'll go ahead and demonstrate one more thing though. Perhaps you want to add a effect that fades all the way into this drop. So an effect that will fade all the way through here just for that little build-up part. So you could move your white line right to the end here because this is where the beat drop is. Right here. So we can move our keyframe right here, and I'll hit record, and we'll go ahead and change this neon value that we did. So I'm going to hit 1 on the neon, and I'll just get out of record. So what will happen now is, as I press play, it's going to fade into that neon effect. Notice I did not add any faders except for the very starting keyframes, which fades out literally everything. But there's no fader here, there's no fader here. So we just do this. It'll get darker and darker. So you notice how the screen will get darker and darker, and the effect will get more and more as it leans more and more towards it. So that is very basic keyframing. As I said, any mistakes you make, you can hit Control Z to undo them, like this. And you can also hit Control Y to redo things. So don't be afraid to use that to your advantage, as well as make sure whenever you're animating that you click up here in the timeline whenever you want to move your white line. Because if you try to move somewhere else, you're just going to be drawing boxes. To finalize this video, let's say you want to upload your keyframe and you are done with everything. So what you're going to do is switch back to project and go ahead and move this GameObject onto your avatar, in this case Arbot. So now the GameObject is on there. And we're also going to go ahead and turn this GameObject off because we don't want to spawn in the game and have our screen animation playing. add your audio source to this game object, because we obviously have our audio down here in the Reaper gang, but we did not add it to the actual game object so that it will play in the game. So we're going to go ahead and create a little audio source. So we're going to go audio source, and we're going to go ahead and drag our audio clip into there. If you watched my audio tutorial, this will be very straightforward, but I'm just going to set a few things real quick. If you don't understand any of this, feel free to check out the audio tutorial. I'll probably have a little sticker somewhere where you can go to that. But we're going to drag this audio source onto the GameObject crunk. And you'll notice now if I go into play mode, possible ear rape warning. You'll notice that it plays. But since it's active by default, this means that if we spawned in the game, it's going to start playing, which we don't want. So we're going to turn the GameObject crunk off. I'm going to turn it off, so that way if we go into play mode, nothing will happen. Yes, which is what we want. So make sure you drag that game object onto your avatar, which is our bot, which it is. And now what we got to do is create a gesture animation, which if you don't know how to do that, I will go through it real quick. I need to add a VRC avatar descriptor to this avatar because I did not add one. So we're going to do that real quick. And we need to drag our overrides in there, so make sure you get your override controller. Just going to do this real quick. If you don't understand anything I'm doing right now, feel free to check out possibly the audio gesture video. Would be a great explanation. So I'm going to drag my custom override. Let's see. Yes, drag my custom override into my animators real quick. All right. So now that we have a VRC avatar descriptor and custom override set up, we will click our bot and we will go to the animation tab again. And you'll notice that it's showing animations for, all the VRChat things. We're going to create a new clip, and we're going to call this Crunk Toggle. Unlike the last animation we made, this one is going to be called Crunk Toggle, not just Crunk, because the toggle animation is the one that we're going to actually put onto our avatar overrides. So I'm going to save, and now you'll notice it's just another blank animator tab. So we're going to add property, and we're going to click on GameObject Crunk is active, the little plus mark. We're going to check mark this and move our keyframes to the right to the very second keyframe. Move our white line, check mark it again, and you'll notice I can move back and forth like this. And even though he looks broken, don't worry about that. It will reset as soon as we switch back to the idle. But you can tell that it's check marked on both keyframes. So we've done it. Now all we got to do is click where it says Crunk Toggle, and we're going to switch back to the idle animation. Bam. So that way our avatar doesn't break. So now we have two animations in our assets. We have our Crunk animation, which is the actual screen effect animation, as well as Crunk Toggle, which is the gesture that we're going to put into our custom override controller so that we can actually experience the animation in the game. So you'll drag your Crunk Toggle onto whatever gesture you'd like. In this case, I'll probably put it on finger point. And once you do that, you will file save just to make sure nothing breaks when you upload, and upload your avatar. And it's as simple as that. That is how you make a very simple keyframe animation. Have fun with it, and y'all should send me what you make, because I'm curious to see how it comes out. This is Savvy. I will see you guys in the next one.